Hello, my name is Waylon Lewis, and every week we'll bring you a new podcast with Elephant Journal. Hey friends, this is Waylon Lewis. I'm here with my puppy Winfield, and I'm about to bring you another wonderful guest. Today we're going to talk about the I Ching. Some of you may have heard of it. This is a new card deck, authored. It's a bunch of cards telling you, kind of making it easier to do the I Ching and more informative, from my longtime friend, Catherine Pilfrey, a wonderful Buddhist teacher who's an expert in the I Ching. So I grew up in the sort of Shambhala Buddhist tradition, and the I Ching was something we did pretty much once a year. Some people did it much more often. And I don't know, for some reason it doesn't trigger my anti-superstition, protocol, where I'm cynical about all things. Here we are. Catherine's about to join us, but it feels grounded. It feels helpful as she talks about in terms of how to handle change. Wow. Hey, Catherine.
So good to see you.
So good to see you. My God, it's been a long time. So Catherine and I knew each other when I was still sort of a awkward, dorky teenager. And now I'm an awkward, dorky adult male. So right. Catherine, so good to see you.
Yeah, wonderful to see you.
Yeah. So how have you been all these decades since I feel like I've seen you?
Great. I'm still in Boston.
Love Boston, miss Boston. So tell me, how did you come to, a lot of us, as I was saying in the intro, I don't know if you heard, in the Shambhala Buddhist tradition, we consulted the I Ching once a year, or we listened to it being consulted. But how did you come to delve more deeply in it?
Well, for me, I realized it's been a few things sort of brought together, but there was a real catalyst that I talk about in the guidebook of when I was at college in Toronto. And I had been introduced to it through Shambhala, and I had the book, right? The sort of traditional Wilhelm Baines translation.
Somewhere up here,
right.
Yeah.
But it was, honestly, I thought it was a little cryptic, a little mysterious. But I was going through a difficult time in my relationship because my boyfriend had met somebody else and couldn't decide whether he wanted to be with me or with her. And, some people would have said, well, you should have dumped his ass. But I didn't. And I wanted to stay together. And so I was in this horrible limbo with him for several months. And it finally occurred to me that I should consult the I Ching. And so at the time, I didn't have a card deck. There were just coins. And so you threw coins, and I got the hexagram splitting apart, which was like, whoa.
And the description, there's always a description of the hexagram that's kind of beautiful and a little bit cryptic sometimes, at least in the old translations. And that also kind of backed up what that title sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Splitting apart is definitely splitting up,
And you were cynical about it. You did it a second time, right?
I did it a second time, not so much because I was cynical, but because I didn't like the answer.
Right. Exactly. Love that. So, you were like, oh, maybe I just, Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought, this can't be right. Like, what? No, this is not what I wanted. And so I threw the coins again. I got it again, which of course, the odds of that are just so remote, right? It's never happened again.
So that's sort of the beginning of your love affair. It confirmed the odds are totally against rolling the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Even more than rolling two die.
Because it's, 3 coins you're throwing 6 times.
Woo!
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was just this light bulb went off in me, yes, of course, this is what has to happen. And, so suddenly I was finding a new apartment, moving out, and, on with a new chapter in my life. But the I Ching it was like a mirror held up to me saying, something that I knew to be true and right, but couldn't face. And having that, mirror held up was just like what I needed to be able to access my own inner wisdom on this,
And
painful,
that's
painful
right.
topic.
And that's such a helpful anecdote, because so often in our life, when you write about how the I Ching is really masterful at helping us relate to change
Hmm.
mindfully, and that so often we want one thing, but inside somewhere in our heart, in our mind, somewhere we know we have to let go, or we have to go with change or something. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because the
Right.
the the I Ching is actually called the Book of Changes. So
Right.
it's about how to understand change in our life and how to work with change in our life. And that change is constantly happening, right?
Right.
As
Yeah.
we know from our
And positive change, obviously, we're always totally great with. Like if I win $1 million, that's, at least for my ego, that sounds great. It actually may be a very difficult experience if I don't know what I'm getting into, or, sometimes people experience sudden fame or success and they don't know how to handle that.
yeah.
But negative change, someone getting sick, or ourselves, death, loss of a job, the I Ching, I mean, this is why I love that little anecdote that you start with so much, because so much of um, the I Ching seems ancient and irrelevant, perhaps, but we're constantly going through change. And if the I Ching can help, you know, that's incredibly helpful. So, was your point with the I Ching Oracle, the card set, it's from our friends at Shambhala Publications, to make it a little more modern or accessible?
Yes, exactly. So I've been sort of studying and using the I Ching since I was 20, regularly. And I realized so I moved to Boston once I graduated from art college, and I didn't have any friends here. My father lived in Canada, my sister was in Canada, my mother was in Australia. So it's quite isolated here. And I think that actually had a big impact on me turning to the I Ching as well. Like it became sort of like a mentor and guide to me. And so fast forward, during the pandemic, I was seeing this wonderful acupuncturist, Athena Desai, and she uses oracle cards in her healing practice. So every treatment, she would pull some cards, and it was kind of my first exposure to using cards that way, and just got me thinking. I was like, huh, this would be really cool if there was an I Ching card deck,
Right.
right? Because it's so easy, just pull a card. And so I started looking. I saw there were a couple decks on the market, but they weren't really my style, and still sort of in the same, antiquated language that was very, patriarchal and male chauvinist and sexist, and then also, sort of weirdly metaphorical.
Yeah, because while the old text is beautiful and wise and helpful, it's all he, the wise. I forget, it's been a while, but the
Yeah, no,
honorable man, goodness.
totally male. It's totally male focused. Um,
Yeah,
like, and when, there was one hexagram was they refer to the marrying maiden, and so the marrying maiden was some young woman who was going to tempt you from the right direction and the right course, right? So uh, it was definitely focused around a patriarchal
and
system.
that's not a big surprise. It coming from, I don't know what century, I'm sure you do, in China, right?
Right,
Which
right. Yeah,
is a very patriarchal, kind of very stratified society.
yeah.
So great question there. I was wondering kind of the same thing, because I haven't tried it out. I just got it in the mail. But how does it work? Do you still throw the coins, or how do the cards work with the changing lines? I think was the question.
Yeah, so The changing lines is the one issue that the cards don't address that well. But so you really just, you don't use the coins at all. You just use the cards. So in the same way that you would consult the book, you just contemplate the question, shuffle the cards, and then pull a card. So you can pull one card for the current situation. You can pull the second card for the future or the changing lines. But then you would have to, I don't have all the changing lines in this guidebook.
Uh-huh.
So I'm working on a companion book that will include that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So is there a way to like use the coins with the card deck or?
No, so you could, if you have a book, you could still compare the two hexagrams, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. If you just have them, you can just see which ones change and then consult the book.
Right, got it.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
But I've never honestly felt that the changing lines were necessarily that helpful to me. That sometimes I felt like the changing lines could sort of send you down a path where it was like it didn't necessarily resonate as well. So to me, I feel like the cards, and there's also the explanation in the guidebooks, gives you the sort of pith instructions for the hexagram.
That's interesting because if you're so devoted and kind of an expert at this point, and it's about change, you don't find the changing lines really that helpful. So we could kind of let go of that a little bit.
I have,
Yeah. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Just simply.
I definitely, there are, scholars and aficionados who would not agree with that, but yeah, I don't know. I just, and especially if you have 3 changing lines, or sometimes you could have 4 changing lines. And so those 4 changing lines will have completely different instructions. And so then it's sort of making sense. And there's a lot more nuance into, if you study it more deeply, like the first line might have something more to do with relationships, and the second line might have a little more to do with ethics, or, there's distinctions like that. But the books don't actually say that. You'd have to sort of go more deeply to have the background to understand that.
So for those who don't know, I mean, we've kind of touched on it, but if you're going through anything, positive or negative, some sort of change, a move, job, relationship, health, you don't have to, like in the Shambhala Buddhist tradition, I was kind of used to it around the
Right.
New Year. But you do it regularly, it sounds like, in your own life, like whenever you feel inspired to do it.
Yeah, so I often do it when I'm feeling unsettled about something, when I have to make a decision about something that I'm not certain about, or when it feels like I'm not feeling that great around something, whatever, around a job or a project or a relationship, or maybe I had a difficult conversation with someone. Any sort of uneasiness, usually, I tend to consult it less when things are going well. It's mostly around when things are going
well, because you feel clear.
Right.
I mean, even if something's going badly, say you have some health issue, but you know exactly what to do, it probably wouldn't arise that you'd be like, I want to throw the I Ching, or I don't know what you call it with the card deck.
Yeah.
Flip the I Ching.
Right.
But when there's a lack of clarity about direction.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently around the idea of uncertainty, because I think that, right, it's the uncertainty that we find unsettling in life a lot of the times, and that there's something with consulting the I Ching or pulling a card that it quiets some of that uneasiness. So sometimes, like around a health issue, because I've had some health issues over the last years, that I could pull it because I'm having sort of a crappy day and I'm feeling crappy. And so I pull a card and it's just kind of a reminder. It's like, oh, yeah. And so somehow, even just getting a little reminder of, yes, you're feeling crappy, as opposed to,
Right.
our mind is always trying to figure out, what is this? What is that? Why am I feeling like this? What are they feeling? Or, there's something that settles that discursiveness, I think.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's something I love about Dharma or Buddhism is often it just confirms what's going on, and your ego is constantly looking for a way out or an alternative. And sometimes even the bad news is comforting in a sense. You can just relax. You can be like, all right, this
Yeah.
is what I'm dealing with. I'm
Yeah.
lonely or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So can you still do it for a friend or do it for a child or a relationship or a colleague or whatever? You can still, if you're, if folks out there get the I Ching Oracle card deck by Catherine Pilfrey from Shambhala Publications, you get comfortable with it. You can say, hey, you're going through something. Why don't we try this?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely, it's funny because for me, I always felt like it was a solitary practice, that I would do it. I would usually sort of consult it after I meditated. But I've found over the years, I have done some consultations for friends, and absolutely it works to do it with someone else. And I was worried. So I think back to the card idea, I was concerned at first that maybe cards wouldn't work, right? That you just need to use coins or sticks. But one of my favorite book on the I Ching is called The Laws of Change by Jack Balkin. And he talked about how, that many different methods have been used over the years, and it doesn't matter what method you use. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. So cards is just another method, just another tool, right? But it certainly makes it easier with someone else to pull a card or do something together.
So yeah, I've had almost the opposite experience where, it's always been done kind of around me or for my community. My mom would do it, but I don't think I was. So when my mom did it, I was watching and kind of seeing how it worked with the book and the coins. But how easy is it to do for a beginner? If you're like, should I accept this job or should I not? Or should I do this thing or not? How does that work?
Well, so that's a good point on the question. So it's really important how you frame the question, and you don't want to have a yes or no answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's not, should I do this or should I do that? Generally, you want to ask a question on what's the best way to proceed on these 2 job offers, right? Or what's the best way to proceed on finding a new job? That's kind of how I like to frame it, is what's the best way to proceed.
Okay. So if I say, what's the best way to proceed? To take this additional thing on, like say a volunteer project, or to keep things simple? But again, I'm sort of making a yes or no, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So do it on what are the important things for me to pursue, or you just have to once you get into it, you figure out how to frame a question. But yeah, you don't want to have an either or a yes no,
because it's not like the magic triangle.
Right.
Yeah, we've shown it a few times, Nina, but yeah, it's gorgeous. And I don't know, I was just trying to figure it out. Is there a magnet in it or something?
There is. It's a magnetic box closure. Yeah. And
then you open it up, and then there's this whole card deck here, and there's instructions. There's sort of your book. That I was reading through. I haven't gone through the actual cards, but they're sort of similar to the book, I guess.
Yeah, so the cards, one of the things I wanted, the cards sort of have the pith instruction right on them. So you can have them, like I have a little stand, you can have it just sort of sitting on your desk as a reminder. And I didn't, because I wanted the instructions on the card because I found, like with other oracle decks or with tarot cards, you might pull a card, but you don't know what it means, right? And then you have to sort of be flipping back to the book. So I want it to be super easy that you just pull the card and the instructions are right there. And then there's additional information in the book.
Mm-hmm. In the little booklet that you have
In the
here?
little booklet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't even need the big old book or a new version of that. Okay. That's great. So if I have some question, then I just go, how is best to proceed? I'm thinking about doing this or this. I don't know. I'll figure out how to phrase that. But then how do I know? I guess I'm just going to have to, I read how to use it in here.
You do. Yeah, it's super easy. You basically just, I like to have a quiet space. You just sit down, have a quiet space, on the table in front of you, or if you have a meditation table in front of you. And then I like to have a journal and write down my question. I like to put the date and the question, and it just sort of helps with the process of getting clear on what the question is. And then ideally, I might take a few minutes to contemplate the question, and then you really just shuffle the cards. Just spend time thinking about the question as you shuffle the cards, and you can just keep shuffling the cards and then lay them out on the table. You can either like fan them all out with the hexagram side up, fan them all out, and then again, as you contemplate the question, you just pull a card. And then you can also, I like to sort of read what that is and then pull a second card for what it's evolving to. Or you.
So you do 2 cards?
Yeah. 1 to 2. If one is clear, then you don't necessarily need to pull the second card.
Okay. So if one is clear, you're good. And if you're like, okay, one is kind of clear, the second one is almost like the changing lines in a funny way.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're not like disagreeing with each other. They're kind of the two together, like 2 colors indicating a direction.
Well, the first card would technically be the current situation. And then the second card can either be like additional support for that, or it can be looking towards the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's sort of like, no one will understand this, but it reminds me of refuge and bodhisattva vows, like the meaning with your, one is kind of where you're at or who you are, and one is your aspiration or your
right.
Those are the 2 main Buddhist vows in our tradition.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So this sounds super easy, which is kind of revolutionary.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Yeah, that's what, because, so it's funny, when I was working on this, I thought that people knew what the I Ching was. So I thought, oh, I'm just making this easy approach to the I Ching. It turns out, nobody knows what the I Ching is, but it's still making it accessible and in modern, like current everyday language. So it's easy to connect to.
Thanks for listening. Hope you're getting a lot out of it. The full conversation is on our indie platform that supports and continues our work, elephantjournal.com/videos. You can subscribe, listen, watch, and participate there. And when you do so, you'll keep these mindful videos and podcasts going. elephantjournal.com/videos. May it be of benefit.